Actually, I do, I responded. I don't know your name, but you're that lady cop from the day my friends and I were arrested. Well, I'm not a cop anymore, but you're right. My name is Stacy. Now get in, she insisted, as she slid to the other side of the seat. I just got back less than 30 minutes ago. How the hell did you know I was even here? I asked. Tony and I were at the gas station on the corner and saw you and your friends walking down the street. I then saw you go into the alley, so we drove over there and sent Tony in to get you and bring you to me so we could talk. I gotta catch up with my friends, I said again. Yes, your friends. That's actually what I want to talk to you about, she said. I told you. That's not gonna happen, kid, Tony said aggressively from behind me as he opened the door, shoved me into the car, then shut the door. Tony, Stacy yelled. That's enough. Sorry, sis. Wait, you two are brother and sister? I asked. Step brother and sister, Stacy corrected. It's a long story. Oh, so why aren't you a cop anymore? I asked curiously. Tony then walked around to the front of the car, opened the driver's side door, got in, put his seatbelt on, started the car and began to drive off down the road. Where are we going? I asked nervously. Relax, no one's going to hurt you, she assured me, smiling. I began to nervously look out of the windows, turning my head to look out each one, and after a minute or so, Stacy said, Okay, I'll tell you why I'm not a cop anymore, but then you have to answer all of my questions truthfully. Deal? Please don't say that word. The last time I made one of those, I inadvertently sold my soul and ended up in this mess, I replied. I know, right? She said. Sorry, bad choice of words. I looked at her funny. She then rolled up her sleeve and extended her right arm to me. Look at my arm, she said. I don't see anything, I stated. That's right. No one can see it. I keep forgetting about that. There's a number flashing on my arm. It's been there since the day I sold my soul. I think it's some kind of counter. The number decreases by 1 every day. Today, the number is 37. You sold your soul too? I asked. Yeah, but I didn't mean to, she answered. I didn't mean to either. This old man, I started. The Seeker, Stacy said, interrupting me. Yeah, I replied. That guy is creepy. About 7 years ago, I was completely obsessed with the TV show Cagney and Lacey, ever since it had first aired. Now, I had seen that show before, and it really wasn't for me. It was more of a girls' show. But anyway, she continued by saying, I was watching the latest episode one Monday night, and I just blurted out without even thinking. I'd sell my soul to a cop. Then the doorbell rang, and I answered, and that old guy was standing there. So if you did actually sell your soul, you know what happened next. Yeah, unfortunately I do, I said. Anyway, after the Seeker took my soul, the next thing I knew I was sitting at my desk in the police station wearing a cop's uniform, with a gun and everything. How did you meet him? She asked. I met him in the bathroom at the mall and sold my soul for rock and roll. The number on my arm is 1995. Wow. Anyway, do you remember the guy that was in the other jail cell? She asked. Otis? I questioned. No, the other one. The limo driver. She just looked at me funny, probably wondering how I knew. Yeah, she said cautiously. Well, I came to find you. He wasn't just a limo driver. He was, well, is a lawyer, just moonlighting as a limo driver. You see, Reggie let him go just after you all left. How do you know? You left before we did, I said. I left my purse on my desk, so I went back to get it, and as I was walking into the station, the 6 of you were turning the corner, she answered. Now be quiet and let me tell the story. I just sat there looking at her. She cleared her throat and continued. He came up the stairs screaming that he was going to sue the town, the entire police department, and anyone else he could think of for wrongful imprisonment. Reggie then attempted to bribe him, saying he would pay him $50,000 to keep quiet about the whole situation. Then the limo guy laughed and walked out. 3 months later, we were all served with subpoenas to appear in court. Reggie, Tiny, whose real name is Dale, and myself. He sued the town for $10 million and won, after the brick of cocaine that he was charged with possessing miraculously disappeared out of the evidence locker. During the hearing, the attempted bribe was mentioned, which, somehow or another, I never figured out how, but it sparked the interest of the IRS wondering how Reggie had that much money laying around on a sheriff's salary. When the truth came out about his bribe-taking, they, the IRS, seized his house in town, his house in the Hamptons, his bank account, and all 4 of his cars. He's now serving 5 years in the state penitentiary for tax evasion, and Tiny and I avoided a prison sentence because, although we knew about the bribe money he was taking, we took no money ourselves. We were fired by the town in an attempt to save face, and I really can't blame them. Shortly after all of this, Tiny decided to follow his lifelong dream of being a ballet dancer, moved 2 states over, joined Weight Watchers, and enrolled in a dancing school. He calls me every now and then. And me? Well, I'm a security guard at the mall, so I guess I'm kind of still a cop, but not really. I stay with Tony and his wife in a small studio apartment in their basement, and the sheriff from the next town over, and his deputies, were given jurisdiction over this town by the state until we elect a new sheriff. So far, no one is interested in the job. So there you go. That's why I'm not a cop anymore. I was so focused on listening to her story that I didn't notice the series of left and right turns that Tony had made. "Here we are, sis," Tony announced as the car slowed down and eventually stopped. We were in front of the town cemetery, which was about 5 miles east of where we'd started out. "What are we doing here?" I said loudly. "I answered your question. Now it's time for you to answer a few of mine," Stacy said. "Here?" I said, shocked. "Yes, right here," she confirmed. Tony then put the car in park, opened the driver's side door, leaving the car running, got out, walked around the back of the car, and opened the back passenger door, the one I was sitting at. "Come on, kid, get out," he said, as Stacy opened the door, got out, walked around the back of the car as well, and stood behind Tony. "Let's take a walk," Stacy said, smiling. As I said before, she wasn't really my type, but she was cute, and that's when the nerd in me took over. The thought of potentially being seen in public with a cute girl outweighed my better judgment. So I got out of the car and Tony stepped back to let me out. "Man, I could really use a cup of coffee right now," I stated. "You drink coffee too?" Stacy asked. "Like a fish drinks water," I remarked. "Watch your mouth, kid," Tony yelled. "Tony, stop with the kid shit," Stacy demanded, smacking him on the arm. "He has a name." What is your name?" She turned to me. I was torn between telling her my real name and telling her my stage name, so I just said Mike. "My name is Mike." "Nice to meet you, Mike," Stacy said, smiling. "Do you want a coffee?" No, I hadn't had any coffee since I'd been in the limo right before we entered the trees. "I'll buy, you fly," I said to Tony. "What?" he replied, confused. "I'll pay for it if you get it," I explained, as I reached into my right front pocket, pulled out the roll of money and handed him a $100 bill. "Holy cannoli, that's a lot of money," Tony exclaimed. I didn't say anything in response, just shoved the money back in my pocket and started to say, "I want." But I caught myself as they didn't need to know about my gift, so instead I said, "I'll take a large coffee with cream and sugar and whatever you two want." "A medium black with sugar," Stacy said. "Run back to that coffee shop on the next street over from where we picked him up." "Okay, sis, see you when I get back." And he walked around the front of the car, got in, shut the door, and began driving down the road again. Stacy and I began to walk along the black iron fence that surrounded the cemetery, and after a few steps she began to speak. "When I walked into that house and saw the 5 of you with your hands on the wall, I knew I had seen you all before, but I couldn't place where. Well, not you, but your friends. I'd never seen you before. When I was driving back to the station, I kept looking in the rearview mirror at your 2 friends, trying to remember who they were, but I just couldn't. When we got back to the station and put you all in the cells, it was really bothering me, and I sat at my desk just thinking about it the whole time you were down there." She then turned right into the entrance of the cemetery, and I stopped and stood there. "Come on," she said. "There's something I want to show you." Ugh, cemeteries really creep me out. I don't know. "Are you kidding?" she said excitedly. "Cemeteries are cool. Sometimes I like to walk around them and look at the dates on the tombstones. It's really interesting. Now come on." And she waved her hand for me to come with her. "Don't worry, I'll protect you," she joked. I just stood there thinking to myself, okay, a cute girl just asked me to walk with her through a cemetery that creeps me out. What do I do? Nerd mode 2, better judgment 0. I walked into the cemetery. Stacy smiled again and grabbed hold of my hand. Hers was soft and warm. I was in nerd heaven. As we walked hand in hand, swinging them slightly back and forth, she continued. "When that creepy guy walked in out of the blue and slammed $100,000, at least that's what he said it was, on Reggie's desk, in exchange for the release of the 5 of you, I knew something weird was going on. Then when you were released and came up to the station, I took a good look at your friends. The redhead, the blonde, the black-haired guy, and the chubby brown-haired guy, standing next to each other. Then it clicked. I knew where I knew them from, but I had to be sure. So I grabbed my jacket, looked back, and shook my head, trying to convince myself that I was wrong. Her grip on my hand got a little tighter then as we continued to walk. I went home and found the video cassette that I used to record some show on TV, put it in my VCR and rewound it. You see, I always set my VCR to record 30 minutes before a program and 30 minutes after, just in case the show started early or ran late, she explained. I do the same thing, I stated. Well, right before my show started, the news came on, and for some unknown reason, I decided to watch the news before my show. They told the story of an accident involving 4 teenage boys, gave their names and showed a picture of each one of them. A redhead, a blonde, a black-haired guy, and a chubby brown-haired guy, she concluded with a slight aggressive tone to her voice. She suddenly stopped walking and squeezed my hand really tightly. It was the same 4 guys that I saw with you in the house and at the police station, 3 days after they died and were buried here. She was almost yelling now as she pointed to the ground. I looked down to see the names of my dead bandmates on the headstones. The town had the graves put back together and told everyone that they'd been vandalized and dug up. But they weren't dug up, were they? Your friends had burst up from underneath the ground. We did an investigation and even the greenest rookie cop could have figured that out. How is it even possible? How are your friends dead and still walking around? Who was that guy at the station? And where did you go for a year and a half? Tell me, she screamed. Stacy grabbed me by the collar of my shirt and pulled me to her, face to face, and for a girl as petite as she was incredibly strong. She screamed again right into my face. Tell me now. Note to self, cute girls are really crazy, I thought. Whoa, calm down, I'll tell you, I said nervously. Why is it so important to you? Because Hey sis, I'm back. I got your coffees, Tony yelled, interrupting Stacy from what she was about to say. She let go of my collar then and brushed off my shirt, smiled like a Cheshire cat and said, This conversation is not over. She then took 2 steps, turned around, extended her hand and said, still smiling, Come on, silly, coffee's waiting. I nervously extended my hand to meet hers and she grabbed it tightly, proceeding to practically drag me to the car. Here you go, kid. Mike, Tony corrected himself, handing me my coffee. And here's yours, sis, he continued. Thanks, we both said in unison, then stared at each other. Where's my change? I asked Stacy's brother. Tony reached into his right front pocket, pulled out the bills and the change at the same time, and the coins fell from his hand and hit the ground, along with a very small Ziploc-style plastic bag. Tony set his coffee down on the ground to quickly pick up the bag and put it in his pocket. And in retrospect, I should have thrown the coffee away, taken off running and hoped for the best. But I was scared and wasn't thinking straight. Tony picked up his coffee with his right hand, handed me the bills with his left, then bent down, picked up the change and handed that to me as well. I slipped it back into my pocket and Stacy smiled, tilting her head to the side. "Let's get in the car, okay?" She said it like a demented valley girl. Tony opened the door for Stacy, who got in and slid to the other side. Then she tapped the seat where I would be sitting and said, smiling that cat-like smile, "Have a seat." I reluctantly got in. Tony shut the door, walked around and got in the driver's seat, and I took a huge gulp of my coffee, hoping it would calm my nerves a bit. And it did, just not how you'd think. I finished the drink off and opened my mouth to speak. "Why is it?" I started, but my head began spinning and my vision became blurry. I was slurring my words, and my head then fell against the side window as I heard Stacy say, "Tony, take me home." And right before I passed out, I thought, not again. Hey, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed my video. And if you did, could you please give me virtual hugs by subscribing and clicking that notifications button. I also have a Patreon page and YouTube channel membership if you'd like to support me further. Thank you again for being here. Keep being creepy.